Okay, well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. This is the 2018 Report and Advisory Board Review Commission hearing. The purpose of this commission is to review the city's reporting and advisory board meeting requirements, which are often written into the administrative code or charter, for their uniqueness, effectiveness, and relevance, all with the goal of improving the way New York City agencies work. I'd like to take a moment now just to go and introduce the commission members who are here with us today. I'll actually ask the commission members to kind of just introduce themselves and their role. That'd be great.
My name is Stacey Gardner. I'm the Director of External Affairs for the Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications, otherwise known as DO IT.
My name is Zach Pyle. I'm here for the Budget Director. I'm a member of the Council's Office at the Mayor's Office of Management and Budget.
Brad Reed, Senior Legislative Counsel, New York City Council.
Rose Martinez, Quantitative Policy Analyst for the New York City Council.
John Russell, Financial Analyst, New York City Council.
Pauline Toole, Commissioner, the New York City Department of Records and Information Services.
Thank you all for being here. I'm Jeff Tumkidik-Assem, Director for the Mayor's Office of Operations. As many of you know, at the Mayor's Office of Operations, we're dedicated to making local government as efficient and effective as possible. So I became director in September and am eager to continue the work of this commission as it goes forward. As chair of the commission, operations as a body provides project management guidance and acts as a coordinator between the commission members, the city agencies, and offices. So I'd like to thank the commission members for all of their hard work and who are here today. City Council, Department of Information Technology and Communications, the Office of Management and Budget. I'd particularly like to thank the Department of Records and Information Services for their work on this commission, and the Law Department representative who are very active in this work as well. I should note that as the Commission's work continues into 2019, Operations plans to convene another public hearing next year to discuss more specific reporting requirements and possible waivers. We want to ensure that public insight is always included in our decisions and our thought process as much as possible. Today we'll be discussing the Commission's work, our process, and we'll be soliciting feedback from the public. But before we kick it off to the public, I'd like to provide a little bit of background about the Commission's progress. Currently, the Commission is soliciting feedback from agencies about which reports they feel should be considered for further review. We've received feedback from many agencies and will continue this work into the new year. Committee members have had a chance to take a look at this, but we want to make sure before any kind of recommendations and decisions are made, agencies have time and full process to kind of go through to make their recommendations and raise any concerns they may have as well. So I think this is the part where we actually get to hear from the public, and so I think we have a representative of the public here, and then we'll also continue on with any kind of feedback that may come in other forms. But for now, I'd like to invite the public to speak.
Good afternoon, Chair Tom Kitty-Cassim and members of the Report and Advisory Board Review Commission. My name is Alex Camarda. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor for reInvent Albany. reInvent Albany advocates for transparent and accountable government in New York, and we're particularly interested in making city government more transparent. We were instrumental in passing the city's open data law and subsequent amendments and advocating for open FOIL legislation, which led to the creation of the city's open records platform. Since the Commission is still determining which reports and advisory boards it believes should be eliminated, reInvent Albany will today share its views generally on the Commission and its work. reInvent Albany supports the mission of RABRIC, that's our acronym for it, I don't know if that's what you folks use, which was approved by the voters after being placed on the ballot in 2010 by the Charter Revision Commission convened by then Mayor Michael Bloomberg. We support open government and transparency, but we also support efficient and effective government. We believe government institutions should seek to continuously improve and evolve. We think it makes good sense to periodically review reporting requirements and advisory boards created by law to determine if they are relevant, useful, beneficial, or have been supplanted by online updates and open data, and therefore a waste of taxpayer dollars and government staff time. Beyond RABRIC, our feeling is the council for decades has passed too many bills requiring reports by city agencies, which takes away important time from other tasks like oversight hearings and more substantive legislation. Former council legislative staff have indicated to us that as many as 40% of all council bills are actually reporting bills. According to Legistar, there are 88 bills in the city council this session alone, just in the last year, with the word report in their title. Some of these reports are more accurately described as data requests, put into law in some instances because a council member wanted to pass a bill, or an agency or the mayoralty was not as helpful as they should have been in providing requested data, or was resistant to doing so altogether. We think a cultural shift is needed in city government, which is arguably already underway, away from reports and laws requiring reports and toward releasing data publicly in the city's open data portal. The more open data becomes ingrained in government, agencies, the council, and the public will save time and money by not having to communicate back and forth about data requests. We also believe the council should be more judicious in passing legislation requiring reports. The administration can prevent legislation that requires reports by being more responsive to information requests from the council. And we think the council's legislative division should consider creating an internal protocol before bills requiring reports are introduced. And we provided a suggestion for some of the things in our testimony as to what a protocol would look like. But essentially, we think that before a bill is introduced by the council requiring a report, that there should be a series of checks that occur, one of which would be to determine whether the information is already in the open data portal, whether it's on the open records portal, whether it's subject to the Freedom of Information law, whether it's a one-time request or not, whether it has narrative information or needs that narrative information, whether the council could get the information through a subpoena or an oversight hearing, whether an inquiry has been made to the agency one time or many times, whether the mayor's office has been contacted. And if the answer to all of those things is no, or I'm sorry, yes, then maybe a reporting bill should be introduced. But we think that those procedures should be followed first to minimize the number of reporting bills. While this commission's looking at reports that exist now that are older than 3 years in city law, I think it'd be also helpful to try to minimize the inflow coming in for subsequent work by the commission. The other major point we wanted to make today, other than just supporting the work of the commission, is that we think the data sets that I believe this commission is compiling and the council has separately compiled, and also Doris, of all the city's reports should be made public. And we think that would be helpful in terms of the public weighing in on which reports or advisory boards may need to be eliminated, those that are useful and should be saved. To my knowledge, there are at least 3 different data sets that show for reports, the inventory of reports before the city. One is the one that this commission has created that I believe has identified 904 reports, I assume from the city charter and the administrative code, that are required. There's the Doris Publications portal. The back end of that, I believe, has an inventory of all the different reports. Certainly you can search it for individual reports. And then I know the council has also in the past worked on a listing of reports that have come to the council, and we testified in favor of a bill, Intro 828 of 2018, which was introduced by Councilmember Cabrera. And that bill, among other things, would provide a listing of all the reports. And so we think all the listings of these different inventories of reports should be made public and then put in the open data portal, hopefully while the commission's still doing its work, so that we can actually get a sense of the broader pool of reports you're looking at before they're winnowed down. We're certainly happy to weigh in on the set that you identify for elimination, but we think it would be helpful to also know the full set, and it could be helpful to groups like ours and other advocacy groups and journalists, just to know that these are requirements that are out there, to identify them for elimination, or just to identify that they are required and may be helpful for the work that we do. So with that, I'll close. Thank you for all your work. Thanks for inviting us today to testify, and I welcome any questions you may have.
I'll first turn it over to my commission members. Any questions? Yep.
So first, Alex, just on behalf of my institution, there are important policy reasons sometimes why we want to do a reporting bill. And I wouldn't want to limit the discourse around the potential for a bill by stopping it in its infancy from being discussed or put before the public. But that being said, the reporting bills that the council pass, you can judge each one on its merits or not, but that doesn't mean there aren't important considerations that go behind the reason why each one goes forward. But this body is looking backwards, right? Like you said, it's 3 years and beyond. So are there reports from that period that may once have had utility, but no longer, be it because of the open data law or just time, that reInvent Albany believes specifically should be waived?
As far as specific reports go, we're essentially waiting for either the release of the 904 listing or the ones that you're seeking to eliminate. We haven't identified, we haven't done the work, which is admittedly very time consuming and rigorous and needs to be done, which I think you folks have done, which is going through the charter and the administrative code to actually identify which reports should be eliminated. There weren't ones even that just came to mind that we thought were no longer needed. I think this speaks to the importance of the list because most groups are aware of the reports that are important to them and less aware of the ones that they don't use. So it's hard for them to just come up with the ones that they want to eliminate. And as for the council's reporting requirements, we certainly don't want to suggest that reports shouldn't become bills, particularly if there's narrative involved where that narrative is informative. We just think that there should be, that the council should be very judicious in passing the reporting requirements. I mean, we were somewhat surprised by just the sheer number of 904 reports, and granted could go back decades, but that's a very high number. And we don't want to see agencies and others be producing reports. It takes a lot of staff time if they're not truly needed by the council or the public.
No, it's just a question. Go ahead.
I have a couple. I just was wondering what research reInvent Albany has done to determine that the general public is interested more in open data sets rather than narrative reports. That would in your testimony, you said that there should be more emphasis on the data.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that we have, quantitative data that we can provide to you that shows that. Certainly it seems like just from the data that's mostly produced by the Mayor's Office of Data Analytics, that there's certainly a lot of visitors to the open data portal, a lot of downloads. Our experience in working with advocacy groups or even app developers or people in the technology world, they find it more useful to have the underlying data so that they can use it for their particular purpose.
Not general residents of the city who are interested in reading reports.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that certainly some of the reports are valuable. It'd be interesting to know, for example, the analytics for the publications portal to see how much that's accessed. We think generally that's just kind of the trend that's occurring more broadly than to say that one is really better than the other. And I think for the commission's purpose, the importance is really to target those reports that are more data requests. I mean, we're not looking to eliminate useful narrative reports, but I certainly have seen legislation in the council, certainly introduced anyway, that were really just data requests more so than a narrative explaining the function of an agency.
And I also was curious if you had looked on the open data portal for the list of reports.
When we looked, we could not find a listing of reports. Maybe it's there, and we just couldn't identify the title. But I did not see.
Publication would be the key word.
Okay, I will check that. Thank you.
I I think that part of the work of the commission is really trying to kind of identify kind of the commonalities between those that we would kind of review further. And I think, Alex, to your point, I think there's a separation also between kind of a lot of the effort that the city can do in terms of open data and making sure that information is available so that it's not just explaining something but allows kind of normal residents and citizens to take a look at their own kind of analysis and have a better understanding of what can be done. So really thank you for that push. Just the last question for me, at least, is just as you think about kind of what we're doing now as a commission, reviewing these, any thoughts on a role that you think the commission should play kind of going forward after kind of this initial review, which is kind of a big focus of this last year of our own work on making recommendations on things that are duplicative or could be waived? What might, reInvent Albany or you see for a commission like this going forward?
I mean, I think one of the things that struck us as we were looking through the previous information that the commission has done was just trying to measure how many of these reports are actually completed on time, and then how are the reports used and who uses them. I mean, we didn't have a lot of information and couldn't easily find information about that. I mean, obviously the first set is the inventory, which I commend you folks for taking the time to identify all the different reports and advisory boards that could be eliminated, and I know the council's done previous work on that as well for those that they receive. But I think, the utility and who uses them and how. I mean, a lot of the work that the Mayor's Office of Data Analytics has done for open data and for particular data sets, I think that could actually be replicated for reports in the way that they go out and engage the stakeholder community and kind of make them aware of the work of the office and that these data sets exist, and then get a better sense of what people want and whether what's there is useful.
Well, thank you very much for both coming and testifying and answering some of our questions. We really appreciate it. We certainly want to take as much as we can into consideration for not just the work that we're doing now, but also kind of the work that we consider kind of as we move forward. And also really good to note how kind of just we can work on both kind of this effort. There are other efforts around open data that need to be pushed, and I think importantly kind of for us to hear some perspective on what is available or the perception of what is available or not, because that's part of this commission's work as well. It's not just to kind of do that review, but also to consider that people, even with the review, may not know that's out there, and we need to kind of figure out from an education standpoint how to talk about it as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your
think
time.
we don't have other public announcements, so
Let's leave it open for like 15 more minutes.
okay. So we'll leave it open for 15 minutes.
Yep.
And then we'll move on from there.
Great.
All right. We've left a bit of time. We're going to get feedback from the agencies, as stated in the beginning. We'll convene a team meeting in late January, early February to kind of discuss the findings that come back from the recommendations of the agencies and discuss the kind of path forward. For this, I would need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All right. So thank you, everybody. The meeting is now adjourned. Oh, we also have, sorry, before that, we did have testimony presented to us, which we'll put up on our public website. That was emailed to us. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.